standing orders in hand, and I suppose he's very well, I'm assured. So can I call on the member for Arangwe St. Joseph now?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute on this most important bill. This bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to bring greater clarity, fairness, and accountability to the framework governing pension entitlement for individuals in the position of Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the bill before you, it's a very short bill containing 6 clauses, but it's a bill that ensures that this government protects the public purse. We on this side have been chosen by the people of Trinidad and Tobago to scrupulously guard every aspect of public spending, and this bill is one such measure that improves the framework how pension payments are to be made to prime ministers in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Speaker, the amendments before this Honourable House are grounded in the principle that pension benefits for holders of high constitutional office must bear a transparent and reasonable correlation to the length and substance of public service. Under the current framework, the law allows for the payment of a full pension to every person who has served as Prime Minister, regardless of the duration of that tenure. What is now proposed, Mr. Speaker, is a more measured and proportionate approach, ensuring that pension entitlement is commensurate with actual time spent in that distinguished office. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have heard many arguments, but basically on 2 fronts from my learned friends on the other side, one of which is the ad hominem point, and the other retrospectivity or retroactivity, as it is called in certain quarters. Mr. Speaker, the question of ad hominem is easy to be dispensed with and in short order. The argument is structured that a law must be applied generally and not to specific persons or group of persons. Mr. Speaker, by its very nature, the law has to be addressed to a specific person or a specific office. By its very nature, the act before the House that is to be amended, Mr. Speaker, is called the Prime Minister, the original act, Mr. Speaker, it's the Prime Minister Pension Act. So any amendment to that act will have to affect a Prime Minister or Prime Ministers. How are you going to get around that argument to say that the law should be general, and if it is specific to a Prime Minister, it is ad hominem, but it deals with Prime Ministers. So it deals with a particular category of persons, which are Prime Ministers. Where's the ad hominem argument? It just doesn't fly. We can't use the Prime Minister's Pension Act to amend something with the Speaker or with members of Parliament. It has to deal with Prime Ministers. So one has to understand the principle of ad hominem. You have to separate that argument. In the case of Ferguson, when it was taken before the Privy Council, a group of persons said that you were targeting us. So therefore it was ad hominem. And the law lords ruled that no, it wasn't just targeting you, it was everybody who was over 10 years who was charged. So therefore that argument failed. You're taking that principle and trying to apply it to a piece of legislation which deals specifically with one office and not a general group of persons. That argument must fall flat, and soon it is uttered, must be dismissed. The second point, Mr. Speaker, of retroactivity or retrospectivity, my lord. The law is clear. It has been repeated many times by judges in this jurisdiction, but as my learned friend from Diego Martin Ortiz raised the case of Ferguson, my lord, as he raised it, I would also quote from the case. So the principle being generally that you must not have retrospective legislation which disturbs vested rights. They're saying there's a vested right in the Prime Minister's pension and it ought not to be disturbed. That is, I understand the argument. What does the law lord say? In paragraph 24 of that same judgment, my lord, this is what Lord Sumption had to say. I see my learned friend here has departed from the chamber. Lord Sumption, my lord, I hope my pronunciation is meeting your
I can say this by way of explanation. In every Privy Council case I've looked at, I've always heard it pronounced assumption. But people have different preferences.
I take guidance from me, my lord. I will have a word with my friend outside of this chamber. This is what Lord Sumption had to say, my lord. Once it is established as a matter of construction, mere retrospectivity does not violate the separation of powers. So I'll pause here. This has nothing to do with separation of powers. I heard my friend touting that phrase, separation of powers. The separation of powers is well known. The executive, the legislature, judiciary. This section does not even come and bring any of those elements into question. There's no question of separation of powers. So let's move on. Or the rule of law and is not contrary to due process. Rule of law and contrary to due process. We are following the rule of law. We are saying if it is a vested interest and it is disturbing that vested interest, we are coming under section 13 of the Constitution. What does section 13 of the Constitution tell us, Mr. Speaker? There's something that you have been very familiar with, and I will just draw it to your attention and for the general listening audience. And section 13 says, an act to which this section applies may expressly declare that it shall have effect, even though inconsistent with sections 4 and 5. And if any act does so declare, and this amendment act does so declare, and for purposes of clarity, I will just just read, my lord, the preamble to the act. It does so declare. Where it is enacted by section 13(1) of the Constitution, that an act of Parliament to which this section applies may expressly declare that it shall have effect, even though inconsistent with section 4 and 5 of the Constitution, and if any act does so declare, it shall have effect accordingly. So I'll continue reading, my lord. And if any act... Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sorry. I do apologize. And if any act does so declare, it shall have effect accordingly unless the act is shown not to be reasonably justifiable in a society that has proper respect for the rights and freedoms of individuals. Any vested right. Any vested right, once it is passed in accordance with the Constitution, can be effective. I'm sure my learned friend from Port of Spain South knows that. So he kind of dallied around the subject, so to speak. Does this amendment, my lord, Mr. Speaker, does this amendment, is it reasonably justifiable in a society that have proper respect for rights and freedoms? And that is the question that we must come to grips with. When one looks at the situation, my lord, Mr. Speaker, I really have to go back to where I was.
You don't have to go there.
Mr. Speaker, the point being, my lord, in terms of a historical perspective, Mr. Speaker, the The 120th report of the Salaries Review Commission, established under 140 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, in accordance with 141(1) of the Constitution, that commission was mandated to periodically review, with the President's approval, salaries and other terms and conditions of service for officers under its purview. Mr. Speaker, once such a review was finalized, that report is submitted to the President and subsequently forwarded to the Prime Minister for Cabinet's consideration before being laid in both Houses of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the 120th report of the SRC, dated October 24, 2024, was laid in Parliament on November 15, 2024. That report, Mr. Speaker, proposed revised salary structures for several high office holders, including the President of the Republic, the Prime Minister, the Opposition Leader, the Chief Justice, the Chief Secretary of Tobago House of Assembly, government ministers, and members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, on the other side, members of this side urging against it took steps to ensure that the report be adopted and the Prime Minister's salary was adjusted from $80,000 for the period October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2023, with an adjustment to $87,847 effective from October 1st, 2023. Mr. Speaker, it was the other side that chose to accept and implement this drastic 47% increase in salary from $59,000 plus to $87,000 plus, knowing full well the gloomy economic situation facing our country. The effect of this escalated salary directly impacted the amount of pension payable. We are here today, Mr. Speaker, indirectly, to tame this wild horse and introduce some proportionality in the pension benefits payable to Prime Minister. The reason I raise that, Mr. Speaker, is that we have to justify to the public that this amendment is reasonably justifiable. How can we sell to the general public of Trinidad and Tobago that a Prime Minister who served less than a year is entitled to a full pension of $87,000 for the rest of his life? No, less. I am saying according to this amendment. We are telling the population that a highest office holder, you serve less than a year and you're entitled to $87,000. But the man on the street, his pension is not even settled, Mr. Speaker. I will give you some points about that pension, Mr. Speaker. Workers in a public service have to achieve 33 and a third years of service to get a full pension. 33 and a third years. We are telling the public that a prime minister who served less than a year should get $87,000. Is that reasonably justifiable in a society that have respect for rights and freedoms of individuals? It's a rhetorical question. Additionally, persons who are members of private pension funds have to contribute 5 years before a reduced pension can be paid, and it is calculated on the years of service in relation to the accumulated years of same. So public, 33 and a half years. Public, 5 years when you get a reduced pension. Up till today, Mr. Speaker, the pension plans of a number of companies which the other side closed down have not been fully addressed. For example, Caroni Limited and Petrotrin are two classic examples. So the general populace is being treated to a different medicine. Private persons are treated to a different medicines, but yes, yet when it comes to the prime minister, the position of prime minister, you are telling this country, and if you spent less than a year in that office, you're entitled to walk away with $87,000 a month. Is that reasonably justifiable? And for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life. And you want to come here and argue retrospectivity and trying to tell the population that we cannot pass retrospective legislation to deal with what my learned friend from Port of Spain South, a lacuna. It is indeed a lacuna. Progressive societies of the world have addressed this situation. Right in the Caribbean, Antigua, I think Minister of Finance, Antigua and Barbados have similar tiered systems. So we are introducing and we are bringing progressive amendments to our legislation. And you are telling us that we can't address it retrospectively. I am telling you, go back to the Privy Council judgment, read what Lord Sumption have said, read what our local court of appeal have said, and they are telling you, yes, you can do it once it is reasonably justifiable. And I'm saying, and I'm making this submission to the House today, Mr. Speaker, that it is reasonably justifiable. I don't want to have to go through all the amendments that have been gone through by my learned colleagues from Oropouche, East, West, and Sour. The clause 5, Mr. Speaker, which amends section 3 of the Act, introduced a minimum service requirement. It provides that an individual must serve in the capacity of Prime Minister for less than a year to qualify for the pension. And that was a significant departure from the current position, which allows for an automatic qualification regardless of duration of service. And you know, Mr. Speaker, the issue, we must listen to the population. The issue in recent months ignited a justifiable wave of public concern and national debate. Citizens, union representatives, political voices across the spectrum have raised alarm of what is widely regarded as a disproportionate and poorly regulated benefit scheme. As Honourable Prime Minister reminded this nation, even as us parliamentarians must serve a full term and attain an age of 55 in order to receive a pension. Members of the public must reach 60, and senior citizens must attain 65. Yet no minimum standards have been applied to the office of Prime Minister, one of the highest and most consequential in our country, that has to be wrong. That has to be wrong, Mr. Speaker. We are trying to bring equity and fairness back to this House, back to this position, back to the issue of pension benefits, because we are saying if it applies to one in this country, it must apply across the spectrum to all. And what is unreasonable, what is offered, Mr. Speaker? What is unreasonable? 1 year of service entitles a former Prime Minister to 1/3 of the highest annual salary paid. 2 years, 1/2. 3 years, 2/3. And 4 or more years, the highest amount of the highest salary received. Fairness, equity across the board. The poor man on the street hasn't got, carony workers and petrol trade have not got their pension regularized. You did not regularize it, yet you want to walk away here $87,000. This can't be correct. The tiered system, Mr. Speaker, is both rational and equitable. It ensures that pension benefits are aligned with actual service and provides a fair mechanism to calculate entitlements. It is important to also underscore that the provisions contained in this proposed bill reflect a more proportionate and equitable approach which is consistent with the principles I've already indicated of fairness, accountability, and responsible governance, and responds to legitimate public expectations regarding the prudent and just use of state resources. This amendment comes at a time of heightened public discourse surrounding pension eligibility, particularly in cases where period of service in high office has been exceptionally brief. While the existing legislation may technically permit such entitlements, it has revealed a lacuna which calls into question the principle of proportionality. And Mr. Speaker, the media houses, everybody have been raising noise about this. We have been voted into government on the basis of listening to the voices of the national public. And just as we have done with our Children's Life Fund, just as we have done with the repeal of the TTRA, we have come today to cure a mischief, a lacuna in this legislation, so that the people of Trinidad and Tobago ultimately may benefit, Mr. Speaker. We are saying, Mr. Speaker, in any well-governed and principled democracy, pension benefits for holders of high office should be grounded in substance of service, the responsibilities undertaken, the duration of tenure, and the demands of the role, and not merely from the fact of appointment. We have moved away from that. The current framework does not differentiate between sustained leadership and temporary occupancy, including those arising out of transitional or exceptional circumstances. Mr. Speaker, the people of Trinidad and Tobago understand sacrifice. Many of our citizens work their entire lives, whether in public service or private sector or self-employment, and retire with modest pension benefits. In light of this reality, it is reasonable to question whether substantially greater entitlement should accrue to those who serve for a very limited time in high office. While all public service is to be respected, the level of benefits must be commensurate with the contribution made, regardless of what position that you have. The amendments proposed by this bill strike a careful and necessary balance. They ensure that our pension entitlements are reflective of meaningful, sustained service rather than short-term occupancy. This is not only a matter of sound financial management, but it is one of public confidence and ethical governance. Mr. Speaker, this is a measured and national reform, one that safeguards the dignity of the office of the Prime Minister whilst reinforcing the trust of the citizenry in the laws that govern us. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House and look forward to the contribution of my other colleagues.
Member for Arima.
Thank you very much.